you for joining us for our monthly webinar series from Local Market Monitor, where we take a closer look at this month's National Economic Outlook, which was written by Local Market Monitor's president, Ingo Windsor. For those of you that don't know Ingo, he has been analyzing real estate markets for over 30 years and is a graduate of MIT and Boston University. He's not your typical economist and has a knack for taking complex data and extracting what is important and providing unique insights and tangible guidance on real estate markets. So with that, I bring you Ingo and his insights on the economy.
Thanks very much, Carolyn. Every month we look at new data so we can get a better understanding of where the economy is headed and what that means for real estate markets. We mainly look at what's happening with jobs because more jobs mean more demand for housing. But we've been in a difficult situation lately. First, because the pandemic interrupted normal job trends. And secondly, because a surge in home prices seemed to make regular analysis irrelevant. I still believe the price surge is unwarranted in most local markets and is misleading investors about long-term profitability there. We may get more clarity later this month when new home price data become available. On the pandemic front, though, we already have data to suggest that we're in a new economic phase, where the virus still depresses growth, but the economy is recovering anyway, and where some permanent changes to the structure of the economy can be seen. Let's look first at the overall job situation. Here we see the percent of jobs that were lost in the recession. In October, it was just 1.2%, and the recent speed of recovery should bring us back to even in the next few months. Vaccination seems to have made the difference, but large numbers of people are still unvaccinated and will remain so. The pandemic is still here. Jobs in business services were up 2% over the pre-pandemic level, an enormous improvement and a very important one because business services account for 15% of all jobs in the US economy. These are services that every business needs, from accountants to office cleaning, so it's a good measure of actual business activity. Let's take a quick look at two of those services. Here are jobs at companies that provide computer system services. They didn't fall much during the pandemic because businesses couldn't do without them, and they are back to pre-pandemic growth as businesses resume. And for the first time since the pandemic began, businesses are again using temporary help services, which supply everything from receptionists to computer programmers. Such jobs took a huge hit at the start of the pandemic, down almost 40%. The fact that businesses again are using such workers could mean they're back to normal operations, but that they can't find people who want to do full-time work. Jobs in the construction sector have already recovered nicely in response to the surge in home prices, which sent developers scrambling to build new homes. Although it will take some time to implement, the giant infrastructure bill Congress just passed will boost jobs in this sector tremendously and for many years. Like construction, the recent gain of jobs in finance is connected to the surge in home prices, which means we don't know how long it will last. In any case, jobs in the finance sector have been least affected by the pandemic. The recovery of jobs in retail, small as it is, could signal a new willingness of individuals to try their hand at running a store, most likely with an online presence, or it could just be a blip on the long-term decline of physical stores in favor of internet shopping. Amazon fulfillment centers, by the way, are not included in these numbers. With manufacturing, we're now getting into sectors of the economy where it's difficult to know if the pandemic is still impeding recovery or if some of the jobs are just gone for good. On the one hand, streamlined US factories that produce food, cars, airplanes, and heavy machinery rely on more and more automation, which means fewer jobs. On the other hand, the limitations of foreign supply chains have been exposed by the pandemic, and some manufacturing will return from overseas. It's possible that these two forces will largely cancel each other out, so we shouldn't expect much growth in the future for this sector. The start of vaccinations in early 2021 is clearly linked to the recovery of many jobs at restaurants. But the fact that this recovery has stalled suggests that many people still won't visit them and that many restaurant jobs are probably gone for good. In the government and healthcare sectors, there hasn't been any recovery of jobs in response to vaccinations or to changes in personal behavior. These are two of the largest sectors of the economy that combined provide a quarter of all jobs in the US. The finances of these sectors were severely hurt by the pandemic, producing staff cuts. It may be that governments and hospitals have found they don't really need all that much staff. In any case, it looks like most of those jobs will not return anytime soon. So we need to reset our expectations. In fact, if we exclude the job losses in these two sectors, the economy as a whole is already back to pre-pandemic job levels. So what does this all mean for real estate markets? First, we have to see what happens for the home price surge. Will it continue? Will it taper off? Will it actually reverse in some markets, as I expect? But in addition, we now have to accept that the bulk of the economic recovery has already taken place. We have to live with whatever strength or weakness of demand for real estate exists in local markets right now. It won't suddenly improve. We are in the new normal. The further development of the pandemic is already baked into the current situation. As a very practical matter, this means investors should again pay attention to local economic growth, or the lack of it, as a guide to future demand for housing, both single family and rentals. A lot of questions remain unsettled. Will more people need to rent, and how much can they afford to pay? How many people can afford to buy a home? What markets will people move to, and which ones will they leave? But these are the usual questions, and investors can start looking at the usual ways to find an answer. That's it. To finish, let me plug our investors meta-analysis, which shows how best to invest in the market, the risks you face, and the best rent range in each local zip code. It's available for 200 markets and is easy to use as 1, 2, 3. Thanks very much for following along. This is our National Economic Outlook. I'm Ingo Windsor.